It has been over 2 decades since movie audiences were shocked by the suspense Hitchcock generated in this picture. Many still think twice about taking a shower, including the actress who took this one.
I don't like to take showers. That's the truth. I tub. And if I'm forced to, if that's the only way, I mean, to say that where I am only has a shower, has to be with the door open and I have to be able to see out. I cannot be closed in with either a curtain or a door, glass door, because I'm scared.
Now, 22 years later, a sequel to Hitchcock's classic has been produced. When the idea of a Psycho 2 was first discussed, there was a great deal of skepticism, especially from the actors who starred in the original film.
I generally do not like sequels. Hitch had just died fairly recently, and I could have a vision of him turning over in his grave.
Well, I think at first it appeared to be the kind of picture that could have no sequel, could have no second act, as it were.
There were many traps. When you realize that this was a classic, the Psycho cult is a very strong cult. We knew that the critics would be laying for us. We were aware of the problems, but we were determined that we could create a story that was worthy of a sequel.
I'm convinced that the writer and the director have gotten together a story which hangs together and hangs by itself as well as the original did.
What moviegoer can ever forget the shocking events that occurred in Alfred Hitchcock's classic film, Psycho? When an insane person commits murder, should he be allowed to re-enter society? That dilemma is one of the themes dealt with in the new film Psycho 2, a sequel to the Hitchcock thriller. Can murder be excused by reason of insanity? Executive producer Bernard Schwartz felt this timely issue made for a stronger film.
I think it has a great deal of statements to make about a theme that's very relevant today, the insanity plea problem. There's been so much in our courts, in the media, that we felt it would make the story relevant.
Thanks to an extraordinary script, both Anthony Perkins and Vera Miles returned to their original roles.
Your Honor, my name is Mrs. Lila Loomis. I have a petition here signed by 743 people against Norman Bates' release, including the relatives of the 7 people he murdered.
Obviously, the heaviest responsibility of all rests on the shoulders of Richard Franklin, a young Australian director making his first American film and a lifelong student of Hitchcock's.
The most unique thing to me about Psycho, and I hope we've captured the same thing, was the tone of the original film. Norman Bates didn't even know he was a killer, and we felt great sympathy for him. And I think we still do today.
Are you satisfied, Doctor? Turning a murderer loose on an innocent public?
Mrs. Loomis, Norman was not convicted of murder. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And since he is no longer insane,
just
he has
legal
as much of a
hocus
right
pocus.
to his own life
And when
as
he
you or I.
murders again, you will be directly responsible.
I love the motivation of my character. If somebody had killed so brutally a member of my family and they were going to come out, I think I would feel just as angry.
In making a sequel to Psycho, it was essential that the director understand what made Hitchcock's films work. Franklin does.
Shock and horror, he thought was okay, and he used it very occasionally. Hitchcock believed in telling you what was going to happen and then letting you sweat about it. Suspense was literally telling you how something was going to be resolved and then letting you wait for it to be resolved.
One of the primary elements in the success of the original Psycho was the now familiar Bates Mansion, a house whose design was dictated by Hitchcock himself. Today, it's one of the major attractions on the Universal Tour.
And as we turn the corner to your left, get your cameras ready. You'll get your best shot of this historical house, perhaps the most frightening prop ever used in a motion picture by Sir Alfred Hitchcock.
For Psycho 2, the house was reactivated and relocated. Hilton Green, producer of the sequel, was a longtime associate of Hitchcock and assistant director on the original Psycho.
The exterior of the house is the original. The interior of the house, the front here, is the original front that they've kept in storage. That was worked on. The newel post lamp, there are many props, set dressing, we have found here at the studio and in Hollywood that were from the original.
They rebuilt the sets down to the last small prop on the table and the picture on the wall. So there was a feeling of deja vu walking onto that set. That 22 years earlier, sitting right around the corner was the chubby man, and it was a strange, eerie first few days on that set.
It's starting again. It's a 10. The role of Norman Bates is a 10. You can't be. I mean, if you're making a psycho movie and you're playing Norman Bates, well, you just got to be having a great time. It's the best part. It's just what it's all about. I really love it.
For all involved in the making of Psycho 2, there has been one overriding concern: to make a sequel that lives up to the standards of Alfred Hitchcock. Director Richard Franklin thinks they have.
It's a story that I think Hitchcock would have enjoyed.
It's just a logical extension of the first story. Norman is released from the hospital and brought up to the house here by his psychiatrist, and says, you know, you're on your own, and call me if you get into any trouble. And that's how it begins.
Well, following a classic film, as Psycho has become over the years, was there ever pressure on you before to ever do a sequel to Psycho?
Pressure? Why would there have been pressure?
I wondered, did people think it was a good idea, and perhaps to have you play it? And,
well, of course, sequels, per se, it's a very recent innovation. The whole world of sequels is something that we never contemplated a generation ago. And it's only been within the last few years that people have taken sequels seriously. Funnily enough, many people criticize them because they think of them as second-rate and old-hat ideas. In my opinion, you have to work harder with a sequel than you do an original film, because everyone in the audience is going to be there comparing your film with the original film, favorably, unfavorably, but in some way critically. So your story has to be good enough that people will forget the original and accept your film for what it is.
Well, how long has this been in, was the film in production? I mean, when did someone first approach you about doing a follow-up?
Well, by the time they got the script straight, we went into production quite quickly, because they realized they wanted to release it in the summer of '83, which is exactly what they've done. And we didn't want to sit around and talk about it. We felt we had a good idea, and we wanted to get right on and film it.
You're working with an Australian director, of course, this time, Richard Franklin, and we know for films that he's made here, and the experience was a good one?
Very good one, right. Very good one.
And was the script itself all cut and dry? Did you feel that there had to be changes made in this particular film?
Well, I consider that I was an authority on Norman Bates, perhaps second to none. Not only having played the part, but having been responsible for some of the changes, even in the original script, and also having been associated with the part for as long as I have. I felt that there was, the things that I had to say about Norman Bates, about what he said, and about what he felt, and about the way he expressed himself, were probably at least to be listened to, even if they weren't to be adopted, which incidentally is the way I always work. I never care that people accept and adopt my ideas, but I do want someone in power to hear them, to hear me out, and then say, hey, you're all wrong about this. I say, fine, we'll do it. It's fine for me to do it your way. I just wanted you to know. But in this case, I felt a little bit more proprietary about it. I felt that I had a certain right to have certainly not to elbow my way around and say we've got to do it this way, but because I didn't need to do that. Richard and I agreed on just about everything.
Knowing Richard as little as I do, I know this must have been an absolute delight for him to be actually making the film that one of Hitchcock's most famous films, because as you know, there's no greater admirer or devotee of Hitchcock.
But very importantly, he chose not to duplicate the first Psycho. He didn't want to make a copy. That's too easy to do, really. He after having studied it long and hard, and other of Hitchcock's films, he then set about to make his own film. His version of Psycho 2. It was not to be a Hitchcock spin-off.
Can I ask you just to give a little resume of perhaps what the film is like, how it starts off?
Norman is released from the institution legally and fairly. There is a book, incidentally, out by Robert Bloch, the excellent author of the original book Psycho, in which he has Norman escaping from the institution. Well, I took exception to that right away. I didn't feel Norman was the escape type. He is basically a good bloke who is interested in law and order and wouldn't escape from where he'd been put. He also has him murdering a nun because he confuses the nun with the mother superior. Well, that struck me as just not the kind of Norman Bates that I ever knew. At any rate, our picture starts with his release from the institution and his determination to start his life over again and to have a productive and calm time of it.
I'd like to ask you just something about Meg Tilly, an actress I don't know particularly myself, although I believe she has done one or two other things. And
yes, I haven't seen her in
excellent
other
in Psycho.
films.
You haven't either?
No.
And what is her background? Do you know?
I know nothing
Tony?
about her. I thought she was very, very good, and she was very appropriate to the film. I thought she did an excellent job in Psycho 2. Very difficult role, and I thought she did it very, very well.
Can we say, Tony, without giving anything away, that there is at least one shock sequence that probably will have the people gasping in this film?
Well, it is Psycho 2, after all. It's meant to have a certain amount of suspense and terror and fright in it. It also has some good laughs in it. And one of the things we're particularly proud of is that our film does have a measure of comedy and a measure of thrills. And this is a very, very difficult thing to get straight.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Tony, and nice to know that you're really not like Norman Bates at all.
Well, that's for you to say.